name is Nina and I play the piano. In this video, you'll learn more about my instrument, its qualities, and I'll answer some of your questions. The piano is one of the most commonly used and played instruments, but there are many things that amateurs might not know about it. For example, how much time does it take to build a single piano? What are some pieces written exclusively for piano? But what about pieces transcribed for it? What are the concepts of basic music theory? And finally, what is the role of the piano among other instruments? This is some of the information that you'll acquire in this video. There are four principal component parts in a piano, and they are the case, the action, the cast iron frame, and the soundboard. The action creates the sound we all recognize. The case holds the instrument together. The soundboard gives the sound richness and resonance, while the cast iron frame holds the strings together. Here's how they look like. Now that you know about how complex the piano is, you're probably wondering, how long does it take to make one? Well, for factory to make a full-size grand, they would need about a year.
You can make something that looks like a piano fairly easily, but to get it to sound like an instrument is very difficult.
You have people in love with their instruments.
I like the piano to sort of play back a little bit.
There's something really magical about this.
Cabinet makers are a dying breed.
If by chance you're interested, I just linked a video made by Steinway Pianos about how they make their signature instruments. Now, the piano making is a very complex process, so let me explain. The first thing you need to do is shape the inner and outer case. Then those are forged together and a machine laminates and polishes them. Things like the legs, keyboard, action, and strings are all made separately and then added to that. Now, I made piano making sound like a very easy process, but minor adjustments are made as well, and eventually it all adds up to a year of hard work. If you already know how the action of a piano works, you probably know how the pedals work. If you're a piano player, you've probably used a pedal at some point, specifically the right one. That one's called a damper, and what it does is it lifts the piano dampers up. That way they don't fall to the force of gravity. That creates a floating sound, even though you've lifted your finger off the key. In this excerpt of music, you can clearly hear that. The piece you just heard is called Polonaise Fantasy by Chopin. A lot of Romantic era composers would use the pedal to enhance their music. The piano has a very rich history. The first piano was made around 1700 by an Italian maker, Bartolomeo Cristofori. The first piano had 54 keys, which is around the amount of keys on a modern harpsichord. Additionally, the pedals used to be played by the knees, as they were located on the belly of the piano. Now, as you can see, they're suspended, and you can use your feet to play them instead. The first instances that the piano was actually used was for accompaniment to other instruments, such as cello, violin, and flute. However, some of the first people to write for solo piano included Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, the son of J.S. Bach, and Mozart. They would write pieces like rondos and sonatas that were meant to be played by the instrument on its own. As the piano evolved and was made easier to play, a lot of composers were inspired by that and started to write piano music as well. Composers like Schubert, Schumann, Chopin, and Liszt were some of the Romantic greats, and they wrote pieces for solo piano that were incredibly technically challenging and, of course, used lots of the pedal. The late Romantic and the early Contemporary era called for transcriptions. Composers would look for works of other people, and they would transcribe them for piano, and other instruments as well, in many different ways. For example, Ferruccio Bozzoni transcribed Bach's Chaperon, which was originally written for violin, but he wrote it for piano and turned it into a very great work of music. This popularized it and made both the violin and the piano piece very famous. What is the role of the piano amongst other instruments? Well, it can be found almost anywhere. It can be in an orchestra, it can be in a chamber music setting, and it can be as an accompaniment to other instruments. It's quite versatile. Let's bring an example. In jazz music, the piano accompanies instruments like the saxophone, trumpet, and drums to create a beautiful sounding piece. The last thing I'd like to briefly mention is music theory. What does it do? Well, it helps you understand music better. For example, you're taught about intervals and how those work, the scales, perhaps the modes of music, time signatures, key signatures, and rhythms. Often you get to follow dictations and memorization, so you could understand music better. You'll be able to find these kinds of intervals in perhaps the pieces that you play, and it really helps you understand it. So, if you'd like to learn about music theory a little more, you can always find yourself a teacher, and you can really learn from them. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. We discussed many topics, like the making of pianos, piano music, and music theory. I hope this enhanced your understanding of piano and the instrument that I play. This is Nina Iorik from Project CliKK. See you later.